So this singer who made the song Rich Men North of Richmond, Oliver Anthony is his name, homie sort of came out of nowhere, and this became a huge, not just song, but also like political conversation pretty much overnight. Now, look, I got to be honest with you guys. I listened to the song. I'm not a fan. In his defense, it's not particularly my genre of music anyway, but I didn't love the sound. Substance aside, even if it was the most base song on the lyrics, I still would be like, I just don't like the way it sounds. Okay. For me, music is all about just the vibes, the feel it gives, and the vibes weren't there. Anyway, so this guy, they played some of his music for the first question at the debate, and they basically, I don't even know what the question was. It was just like, huh? He's right, isn't he right? Like, that was the gist of it. That was the vibe of it, and they wanted to get these politicians to react. And so he came out and he commented on that. Now, we're going to get to that in a second, but first let me walk you through why this song blew up and became a massive political issue. So here are the lyrics. I can't play it for you, copyright reasons. You guys know the drill, especially when it comes to music. These guys are vicious when it comes to that, the companies that own the music. Anyway, so the song is Rich Men North of Richmond. He says, I've been selling my soul, working all day, overtime hours for bullshit pay, so I can sit out here and waste my life away, drag back home and drown my troubles away. Okay, so far, the lyrics are based. It's very, working class focused. It's like, we're being exploited at our jobs. We don't get paid enough. 100% with him. It's a damn shame what the world's gotten to for people like me and people like you. Wish I could just wake up and it not be true, but it is. Oh, it is. Living in the new world with an old soul. These rich men north of Richmond, Lord knows they all just want to have total control. Want to know what you think, want to know what you do, and they don't think you know, but I know that you do, because your dollar, okay. So far, okay. But then it gets to this. But your dollar ain't shit, and it's taxed to no end because of rich men north of Richmond. Look, when it comes to working class people, I would agree with him that you should lower taxes on working class people because they don't make that much money. They don't have enough money, so them keeping more of their own money is a good thing. When you want to talk about raising taxes, I'm always talking about the wealthy because the wealthy make nearly all the goddamn money, and they can afford to pay more, and we could use that for good social services. We're going to start to veer off of a cliff here. I wish politicians would look out for minors, like the profession, a minor, and not just minors on an island somewhere. Okay, so that's a Jeffrey Epstein reference. Lord, we got folks in the street, ain't got nothing to eat, and the obese milking welfare. Hold on. So who's the we? Like, I think when he says we got nothing to eat, he's talking about like, oh, us hardworking middle-class folk. But he contrasts that with what he's basically referring to as the poor moochers, the people who don't want to work for a living, the people who are lazy and they're just milking welfare. Now, all of a sudden, the song is not a working class anthem. Now it's an oligarch's dream. Because this guy, instead of focusing his anger and his ire on the elites who are screwing both poor people and middle class people, he pits the middle class against the poor and frames the poor as you guys are just leeches and moochers and you're lazy and you're just taking money from good, hardworking Americans. No, Oliver Anthony, poor people and middle class people, they all make up what we call the working class, and you're all in the same boat. The same policies that would help the poor are the same policies that help the working class. But you are pitting the middle class, the working class, against poor people who are also working class. So this is where he totally lost me. Then he goes, well, God, if you're 5'3" and you're 300 pounds, taxes ought not to pay for your bags of fudge rounds. So this is the standard welfare queen nonsense. It's this lazy idea, which was popularized by Ronald Reagan, that there's these poor people and they're short, they're fat, and they just eat shitty food all day and they don't work. He continues, young men are putting themselves 6 feet in the ground because all this damn country needs is keep kicking them down. Look, I would describe this as confused, if I'm being kind. If I'm not being kind, I would say this is fake populism personified. Fake populism. Because he's posturing as, oh, I'm against the elites. I'm against the rich men north of Richmond. So I'm going to stand up for regular folks. But then he also is throwing haymakers at regular folks. I got news for you, Oliver Anthony. The overwhelming majority of people on welfare or on some government program are on it because they need it, and they're also decent, hardworking people who are just trying to get by, but they're not making any money. In the same way that you seem to understand about the middle class, like, oh, these people are hardworking and good people, good work ethic, but they just having trouble getting by because the system's rigged. The system's also rigged against those poor people. It is. And so Anybody who is trying to portray this song as like a working class anthem or something, absolute nonsense. He's pitting the middle class against the poor, which means he's pitting the working class against the working class. No, you're in the same boat. Look up for all of, all of the real problems in the country. The rigging of the economic system, the corruption, that's the real problem. And by the way, capitalism, if we're being serious, get to the heart of the real problem, is it's not just you're oppressed by the rich men north of Richmond, the people at D.C., you're also oppressed by your boss, by the CEO at whatever company you work at. You're also oppressed by them. Because, a business structure under a capitalist system is effectively a tyranny. It's a dictatorship. You have to take orders coming from right above you, but you're not going to point your ire at them. You're only going to D.C., which is, again, fake populism. Okay, so anyway, he was still getting all this attention as like, oh my God, look at this working class anthem. But as I just described, it's not really a working class anthem. This guy is confused at best. But then we get this. So he comes out and says, I don't support either side politically. Not the left, not the right. I'm about supporting people and restoring local communities. Now go breathe some fresh air and relax. Please, I'm not worth obsessing over. I promise. Go spend time with your loved ones. So, people rightly looked at this and said, okay, so you went from arguments that were sort of populist right-wing, mad at the elites, but also mad at the poor. This is kind of like the embodiment of the modern-day Republican ideology. They think they're populist, they think they're anti-elitist, but functionally their policies serve the wealthy because they're shitting on the poor people and acting like we're not in the same boat, right? But here, this is kind of a reversal, even though he doesn't think it is, because now he's doing enlightened centrism. No labels, third way politics. I'm not left. I'm not right. I don't support either side politically. It sounds like, Andrew Yang got not left, not right, but forward. Okay, but here's the thing, Oliver Anthony. What does that mean policy-wise? Like, this is just amorphous, vapid anger. Like, I'm mad at the system. I'm mad at the people at the top, but I'm also mad at the poor people. Okay, well, what are you in favor of? I'm not left. I'm not right. I don't support either side. I'm about local communities or something. What does that mean? What's your take on unions? What's your take on the minimum wage? What's your take on single-payer universal health care? What's your take on getting money out of politics and having clean elections? What's your take on ending our wars in the Middle East? What's your take on the Patriot Act? What's your take on marginal tax rates? What's your take on the capital gains tax rate? Anything substantive to say other than this like vague anti-establishment but centrist virtue signaling? Anything? This is a wild ride. I hope you guys are buckled up. Then we get this. So he's responding to the fact that at the Republican debate, they played that clip of his song and asked them about him and his song. And he says this.
If there is anything for me to address at all with you, it's that it's the one thing that has bothered me is seeing people wrap politics up into this.
Let me just pause to say, no, people are not bringing politics into this. You brought it into it. The song is political. Even if you like to think of it as not political, it is political. I'm really getting fed up with people who say this, like, bro, this isn't even political. Your song is deeply political. Whether or not you want it to be, you made a political song. And so, of course, politics is brought into it. You brought it in, and people, of course, are going to respond and talk about your politics. I mean, it's obvious, but he's acting like, bro, they're bringing politics into it. You did.
Like, it's aggravating seeing people on conservative news try to identify with me like I'm one of them. It's aggravating seeing certain musicians and politicians act like we're buddies and act like we're fighting the same struggle here, like that we're trying to present the same message. I've had a lot of people reach out to me, and I've tried to be polite to everybody, and I've talked to hundreds of people the last 2 weeks. But it seems like certain people want to just ride the attention of this song to maybe make them their own selves relevant, and that's aggravating as hell. The other thing that I find aggravating is, it was funny seeing my song it was funny seeing it at the presidential debate. Because it's like, I wrote that song about those people, So for them to have to sit there and listen to that cracks me up. But it was funny kind of seeing the response to it. Like, that song has nothing to do with Joe Biden, It's a lot bigger than Joe Biden. that song's written about the people on that stage, and a lot more too, not just them, but definitely them.
So if you didn't hear all that, he was saying it was infuriating watching them play my song and react to it because that song is written about them. And he says it wasn't written about Joe Biden. It's much bigger than Joe Biden, but it's definitely about them on stage. So then people see this and they're like, well, hold on. Because the right was celebrating him because they liked the vague anti-establishment, fake populist posturing where he goes after the rich men north of Richmond, but also shits on poor people on welfare. The right liked that, but then after they hear this, boom, they all turn on him and they're like, oh, hold on, is this guy some sort of a lefty? Because he said it's not about Biden, it's definitely about those people on stage and more, but definitely those people on stage. Okay, but I got another curveball for you.
What I want out of this, like for the general public, it's for people to, I guess, for one, to stop relying on someone 150 or 500 miles away from them to like solve their problems for them. Like nobody in Washington D.C., no one in the federal government's coming to save us. Like the people that are going to save us are each other. You know, local relationships. Like even families are torn apart. Like I made an example in one post about, and I've seen this in my own household at times, where you'll have a whole family under the same roof. And instead of them spending time with each other and caring about each other, every one of them sitting there just looking at their own piece of technology, like completely self-absorbed in that and not in each other. That's the real problem. We're very disconnected from each other, just on a community level.
Look, the government's not the answer. Nobody in D.C. is coming to save you, and you got to rely on family and local communities. And of course, Ted Cruz tweeted this and says, as Ronald Reagan said, quote, the government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem. And so this is Ted Cruz trying to make, I'm with this guy. This guy's making a good point. I'm kind of torn between really being annoyed and like pissed at this guy, but also at the same time trying to come to the realization that he is sort of representative of many regular Americans, right? Like this sort of just vague understanding of politics and just sort of anger at the system, which is justified anger, but doesn't really have a coherent philosophy or ideology or ideas or policies to fix the problems. And I guess the thing that's annoying is if you're going to be one of these people that talks about politics all the time and is kind of obsessed with politics, but all you have is the like whining and bitching and moaning about the state of affairs, but then your only solution is like families or, you know, local government, or it's like you don't know what you're talking about. Like you're just really, really confused. Your anger is justified, but you haven't done the next step to say, okay, what actually are the problems and how do we really fix them? So, look, my ultimate takeaway on this guy is he's all over the place politically. You know, I don't doubt that he's against the rich men north of Richmond, the D.C. politicians. He's made that very clear. He doesn't like the politicians. Great. Him and I agree on that. But then he's shitting on people on welfare and poor people and fat people, and it's like, I totally disagree with you on that. The working class needs to stick together and, you know, make change by going after the elites politically. And the weird centrist posturing of like, I don't support either side politically. I'm not left, I'm not right. But then he also goes after Republican politicians. But then he also makes very clear, if anything, I think the solutions are local. I don't think the federal government should really help on that front. Well, that's a right-wing belief. So he's all over the place politically. What I would say is this. If you agree with his shitting on the elites, understand it's not just DC politicians. It's also CEOs. It's also billionaires. It's also the owner class. Understand the problem is also, it's not just Washington, D.C. or vague government. It's also capitalism. The nature of capitalism oppresses workers. When you go to work, you work in a little dictatorship, in a little tyranny. And you don't have many rights when you're there. So we love political democracy, but economically we're like, oh, which dictatorship do you work for? He hasn't really connected those dots. Furthermore, on the whole, like, well, you know, the government's not the answer. No, sometimes the government is the answer. Why is it every other developed country can have universal health care and they have 0 people die every year from lack of health care? But here in the United States, we have anywhere from 45,000 to 60,000 people that die every year because we don't have universal health care. 500,000 medical bankruptcies here. Medical bankruptcies isn't a thing in other developed countries, but we have it here. In an area like healthcare, more government is the answer. It is Medicare for all is the answer. It is the answer for the federal government to step in and pass a law that says, you know what? We need a living wage. Sorry, but $7.25 an hour ain't cutting it. Now a poll shows a majority of Americans want a $20 an hour minimum wage. That is on the federal government to step in and play a role and help fix it. You do need the federal government to say, you know what? Everybody has a right to a union. Because we've seen how good unions can be with all these recent negotiations. We've seen how good. And you need the government to step in to facilitate that. You want the government on your side to represent the people to get these things done. And so, ultimately, I don't want to be too much of an asshole to him because I think he means well, but I would just tell him, like, all this vague stuff is helping nobody. This vague, like, oh man, the politicians are bad, the system is bad, but what's my answer? I don't know, families, local government, something. That ain't going to fix shit. The real way to fix stuff, definitely need a right to a union so workers make more. If you care about what you were just talking about there, you should be a loud and vocal supporter of unions. Not this nonsense, no labels, third way enlightened centrism, which gets us nothing. Who's the ultimate third way centrist? Joe Manchin. What does Joe Manchin do? Nothing but serve the elites, the same elites that you're pretending to shit on. So the real answer here is you should come out in support of a higher minimum wage. You should come out in support of a right to a union. You should come out in support of universal health care. You should come out in support of free college. I'd love to hear what his thoughts are on that. Even the student loan debt reduction, some student loan debt reduction that Joe Biden did. Are you against that? Are you for that? So don't do this thing like of, who, me, bro? I don't do politics. I'm not a political guy. But also I'm going to say really political things. And also I'm against the elites, but only the DC elites, not necessarily the corporate elites. And also the answer is like local communities, and that'll fix it. That won't fix Dickie McGee's axe, man. I hate to tell you. Problems are bigger than that. How are you going to fix the issue of climate change with just families and local community? You're not going to. So look, final point. I know I'm dragging on here, but he's just confused. He's just confused. I want to be kind to him, but he's confused, and he's also out over his skis. He's not some sort of political leader, and everybody needs to know that. He's not some sort of like guiding star through the wilderness and the nonsense. He's a guy who is kind of like an average American and just deeply confused about politics and probably thinks he knows way more than he does by the way he talks about all this stuff. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.